So one of the aspects that people get wrong about spirituality and the spiritual path is that it is a path of healing. And no, spirituality is not a path of healing, even though it does have the ability to heal people. Spirituality is actually the path of knowledge, the path of enlightenment. And so this idea of spirituality being the path of healing, we can even go back to the countercultural movement in the West, when a lot of people overlaid psychology over spirituality, right? And so then psychology was infused within spirituality from the counterculture movement, and then it became a path of healing. But healing itself is not an end of itself when we talk about spirituality, nor is it a means, and nor should it be the motivation for someone on the spiritual path, because the spiritual path is primarily about the path of knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. We find that a lot, actually. It's commonly all across the spiritual path that a lot of people who come into this journey in a later age, or the people who come into this path because of their problem or traumatic experience, right? Again, this can be good motivation to coming into the journey, because obviously it helps, and it if you're lucky to get into even a deeper knowledge, that it actually removes the entire so to say, the problem or traumatic experience.
Yep.
But again, like the people who come into this journey in the later ages, because again, the people have a lot of regrets in their life, and they want to fix a few things, and they want to better their life for the rest of their life they have left, right? But again, this is often can be a wrong motivation, because it becomes the attachment in a way that it's kind of paradoxical process, because they want to remove those past traumatic experiences or problems in their lives from the spiritual practice. But in the end, this kind of become a trap, or the attachment itself, because they forgot to begin with why they came into this journey, right? In a sense, very ironically, but we see that a lot actually, because in a sense, those negative experiences have given them sense of identity, right? In the end, so that if they truly let go of those memories, or even to not get bothered by that experience anymore, is almost feeling like losing the sense of identity. And again, ironically, people find that somewhat threatening and even fearful of that, because it feels like they are losing themselves in a way, because they can't get over that kind of fear. So they often become perpetual self-healing person.
Yeah, that's right.
So they can't get into the deeper spiritual practice. And I actually think that the being perpetual self-healing person is to be like a spiritual infant stage, actually. It's not even primary school level. It's a kind of preschool. Yeah,
exactly. And especially when we're talking about the true spiritual teachings, right? Like I've always said to people, and I've been honest in emails and this and that for over a decade, as you know, with people. Sometimes you've got to address this type of maybe trauma you've experienced and this and that before you even embark on the spiritual path, because the spiritual path itself is about that ultimate knowledge. It's about understanding the true nature of yourself, which is actually beyond your trauma, right? It's beyond your psychology. It's beyond all of that. So sometimes you have to address all of that so you can have a clean slate that you can begin the path. Otherwise, you become a perpetual healer, like what you said, right? You're in this cycle of perpetual healing, and it just never ends, because you can always look at yourself. You can scrutinize yourself. You can critique yourself to an nth degree with many things, and you can find perceived flaws, right? And so maybe they're not flaws. Maybe you are only seeing them as flaws, but someone else objectively could look at that and say, why are you even worried about that in the first place, right? And so what does that do? That reinforces this self-obsession someone has about themselves, right? So the perpetual healing is a result of self-obsession, right? And so that becomes the problem in and of itself, this self-obsession. So it's the self-obsession that you need to heal yourself from, not the actual perceived trauma that you may have experienced, right? And look, we've all gone through certain suffering in our life, right? In this day and age, the suffering is extremely exaggerated. And that's because we've become a very soft culture, right? If we go back to World War II and you witness someone get their head blown off, right? That trauma is a lot deeper than someone writing a negative comment to you on Facebook or calling you a name, right? We've become such a weak society where you can call someone one name and it may be determined as a very bad word or this and that, and someone's whole world falls down. That's a bad sign of character. Whereas the person who was at World War II, who actually witnessed someone get their head blown off, that's real life.
That's right.
That's real trauma, right? And so we've become such a soft society, and in becoming a soft society, we've become self-obsessed because spirituality went to individualistic cultures, right? And so individualistic cultures can be good, but part of individualistic cultures is this idea of self-interest. And so you're working for yourself rather than working for the collective or the greater good, right? And so then when you infuse spirituality within that individualistic mentality, then you have this self-obsession, right? So then you begin to obsess about yourself constantly. And so then you think, oh, there must be something wrong with me, right? Why am I like this? And then you're in this cycle of perpetual healing. And it never ends, right? And so you see all of these healing retreats and this and that, which is pretty comical, right? But you see people go from one healing retreat to the next, to the next. They actually don't want to really heal. They feel comfortable in this process of so-called healing. They don't really want the knowledge, because you know what the knowledge does? The knowledge destroys all that healing, right? It's like when Ramana Maharshi, when a lady asked him about, you know, all these problems and this, that, you know, Indians talk about this in a different way. They talk about vasanas, right? They talk about habits and tendencies that we have. Not so much that vasanas are essentially negative. You can have positive vasanas, right? And so she was talking about negative vasanas. And then Ramana said, basically, you know, when you bring it back to the inquiry, who was the one that actually has to remove these vasanas? Who is the one that needs to be healed, right? And he says that when you understand that, then that burns all the idea that you need to be healed and everything all away.
Yes, in a way that, like you said, about the soft culture of our modern days, right? Even in the sense that how you identify as a trauma or traumatic experience itself is somewhat reinforcing the sense of identity, right? Reinforcing the self-obsession. So that from that perspective, there will never be a healing, actually, because try to keep forgetting that the negative experience only going to solidify your ego somewhat. So again, from that place, you won't have any progress in your path, actually. It's only going to worsen the problem, or like you mentioned, it'll just go from one retreat to another just to have the feel-good experience, right? We see that even like a Neo-Advaita satsang scenes, right? A lot of people come with their own personal problems and they want some sort of answers, and they want to resolve those sort of past experience. But we need to come to a conclusion sometimes in a way that there never will be any answers, or there never will be any resolution. And what if that is actually the part of a living life, you know? And that's somewhat accepting that somewhat will only strengthen ourselves, right? And we need to sometimes come to the understanding that that is a part of life, and we need to be able to accept that as a living life, and that only mature us as a human being. And the spiritual path is not anything different from that, actually. Learning from that experience and just being okay and accepting the reality as it is, right? Not necessarily seeking for any particular answers. And a lot of questions that people have, and not any specific answer can fulfill that questions too. No. But people don't stop chasing looking for the answer. They keep looking for it, keep seeking, right? So that can just kind of you will go down the rabbit hole, really, and then you'll never get out of that. So that that'll give no growth. It'll only create more obstacles in their journey.
That's right. If you get a microscope and you look at anything, right, you can go on as far as you want. There's still more to see. There's still more to see. Then you have to get a stronger microscope, more magnified. There's still more to see. It's infinite, the amount you can see about your personality, for example. You can look at your personality and you can nitpick, and we could be here all day. We could be here for a lifetime, nitpicking, right? And so when is enough? Like you said with radical acceptance, right? You have to, at some stage, you have to radically accept who you are, what you are, from a personality perspective, from an egoic perspective, and allow it to be, right? Allow it to be. The path of Wu Wei, in some sense, is to allow your personality to be, allow it to just run its course, but you understand your ultimate nature, right? That's the path. That is the spiritual path, right? You're allowing your personality to be, you're allowing it to intermingle with the world, do what it needs to do, but you know that you're much greater than what that is. And so the problem is people continually are magnifying the microscope further, and it's just never going to end. And then you just get in this perpetual path of healing, which doesn't get you anywhere. And so then when you start to talk about all is the Tao or all is Brahman, and you are that, and you try to explain that, in simplistic terms, and though they may understand it superficially, they don't really feel it deeply because they're more attached to this path of healing than the path of knowledge, right? And so the penny has to drop eventually for those people that you've got to drop all that. Because if you don't drop all that, you'll never understand your true nature. You're never going to understand your true nature just by continually analyzing yourself. This is, again, the problem with overlaying psychology on spirituality. They're two different things. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning that sometimes it is necessary to deal with your psychological problems before you even attempt to walk the spiritual path, because those problems will continue to surface and you'll be attached and attracted to those problems because, as you were saying, you think that's who you are and you don't want to let go of those. Sometimes people wear their suffering like a badge of honor. They do, right? They wear their suffering like a badge of honor. In the modern day, it's very in vogue to play the victim all the time. They wear it like a badge of honor, where in the old days, we could just discard with the victimhood and accept the reality as it is and just move forward, right? Because everyone's had their turn in life as the victim, right? Everyone's had their turn. But nowadays, there's all of these narrative and this or that around that perpetuates victimhood. And so then people play to that to get an upper hand in society. And that's a bad sign of character. That's a weak character, right? And so those people are not even remotely close to beginning the spiritual path. So it is important that we address maybe our trauma and this and that. Obviously, we don't need to exaggerate it before we go on the spiritual path, right? But as I said at the beginning, the spiritual path can be an outlet to heal people inadvertently, right? Like you could follow the path of Atma Vichara, right? You could follow the path of self-inquiry. And then after a few years, you might introspect and look back and think, oh, well, that's just gone. I didn't even pay any attention to it. It's not even there anymore. And so that's how the spiritual path can help. But the irony is that if you are following the spiritual path, you're not even attempting to address your trauma or what you think needs to be healed, and it just disappears in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.